This is Wraith from Wraith Rain. I'm an author of serialized gay romance fiction. Every week on this podcast, I'll be reading a chapter from one of my gay fantasy shifter serials called Dragon's Reign. I'll explain at the break how you can find out more about this story and others I write. So let's get to it. Chapter 6, Wisdom or Malice. You will not bar King Valerius's way, Simi hissed at the dark-haired young man who both bristled and balked at him. The claw captain was the same height as Marban's lackey, but somehow Simi loomed over him like an adder about to strike. The young man's Adam's apple bobbed frantically up and down as he stammered out, "Marban has other guests. At the moment, you have to wait." Simi's black eyes sizzled with anger. "Do you know who this is?" He gestured towards Valerius. "This is your king." "You still have to wait," the young man cried, his eyes flickering between the two of them. "No, I do not," Valerius said quietly, and simply pushed past him. When the young man tried to slip upstairs to let Marban know they were coming, Simi blocked the man with the flat of one hand, so only Valerius and Simi went up the strangely greasy set of stairs to the throne room. Shioni was speaking with the poor children outside, trying to see if she couldn't charm some information out of them. Valerius's nostrils flared as he set foot into the half-moon-shaped space with a throne that mirrored his own. Simi let out a large swear and spat at the sight of it, though he had likely seen it before. But perhaps seeing it in the presence of the true king clearly raised his ire even more than usual. Simi went directly to Marban and grasped the swarm shifter's forearm to tug him out of the seat, when Marban remained seated on the parody of a throne as Valerius approached. "Get on your knees, Marban. Your king is here," Simi demanded. "I am an old man. If I kneel down, I might not get up again." Marban's voice trembled as if frail, but Valerius noted that Simi's powerful pulls on his arms did not move the shifter at all. "Let him be," Valerius told Simi. "This will not be a long conversation." With a raised upper lip, Simi slowly took a step back. He still looked like he wanted to simply wrench Marban from the throne and force him on his knees. But he said with full deference, "As you wish, my king." Then to Marban, "You are lucky he is so indulgent of your age." Marban put a hand to his chest. "I am grateful for your indulgence, King Valerius. Now how may this old man help you?" Valerius stood in front of the old swarm shifter. It always darkly amused him that Marban dressed and acted as if he were some wise old sage, a helpless old man, no one to fear, but one to give wise counsel instead. Anyone who thought that was a fool. Not to say that Marban wasn't wise, but his dangerousness far outstripped his wisdom. Marban and Valerius regarded one another silently for long moments. Shioni had hoped that they would find the white dragon shifter before Marban did. But Valerius knew that this clever criminal would be a step ahead of him, maybe even 10 steps, considering this happened in his supposed territory. So while the claws looked for the white dragon shifter among the crowds, Marban could have gone directly to him or her. "We should turn him to ash," Raziel growled. Valerius wasn't altogether in disagreement with his spirit, but he reined his anger in and regarded Marban silently. It was a win when the old swarm shifter finally spoke again. "What brings you to the below, King Valerius?" "I think you know," Valerius said, his voice low and dangerous too. Marban flashed him a brief and brilliant smile, showing crooked yellow teeth between thin lips. "Ah, you mean the winged visitor that we had in the market today. I should say the second winged visitor. You also were present." Valerius ground his teeth together. "Where is the white dragon shifter?" Marban spread his arms to his sides and lifted them upwards, palms towards the ceiling. "I have no idea." Valerius was sure that this was both the truth and a lie. Marban likely did not know at this moment where the white dragon shifter was, But he would know where the white dragon shifter had been and where the white dragon shifter was going. You may make this place stink to high heaven with incense, but I can still smell the white dragon, Marban. And they were here not all that long ago, Valerius said and pointed towards the floor. I did entertain a young man here earlier, and he was a shifter. But he was in his human form, so I could not know for certain what type he was. Despite what they say, not all of us look like our spirit animal. I am not in the mood, Marban, to parry words with you. Answer my questions plainly. It was Marban's turn to grow angry. He leaned forward on his throne with his pointy elbows resting on the throne's stone arms and hissed back, You are in a bad mood? You are upset? What about those you killed today in the market? There was a stab of regret and grief that went through Valerius. He had no excuse for what had happened. Raziel might have taken control, but he was as responsible for his spirit's actions as much as for his own. He and Raziel were one. King Valerius is not here to discuss such matters with you, Simi shouted, his golden cheeks flushing with high color. You are a criminal. On the contrary, those families have already come to me and are requesting that I represent them in getting some form of compensation for their losses. Marban seemed more like a coiled serpent than a swarm shifter at that moment. Although really, is such a thing possible for the loss of life of a wife, a son, a daughter, a husband, a brother, a sister, a lover? What is a life worth, especially when it is cut short by the person who is supposed to protect them? How dare you! Simi lunged towards Marban. Valerius held up a hand and Simi froze, teeth still revealed, forked tongue flickering, black eyes glowing green. How many have you killed in your day, Marban? Valerius asked softly. Your pretending to care about life is tiresome. You use and abuse these people. You live off of their misery and their deaths. So your approbation means slightly less than nothing to me. Yet, while I am harassed by your claws for crimes I did not commit, there will be no prosecutions for the lives lost today, will there? Marban asked almost conversationally. No one could ever bring you to justice, now could they, King Valerius? Marban was right. Valerius would never be formally judged for those people's deaths. Accidents or no one would even bring it up to him, except for Marban, of course. Even the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Canada would offer only awkward words about it, if any, but more likely than not, they would stay silent. The only satisfaction those families would have was if he took some form of his treasure hoard and gave it to them. Valerius swallowed down bitter bile. Raziel, you see that you have put us in a position that is untenable. Do you not realize this? Valerius asked his spirit. That is human justice. Those are human concerns. They are not ours. Raziel responded with a snort of black smoke. Why do you care what these people think? They must do what we say, no matter what. You run yourself ragged, concerned with their feelings. They are my feelings too, Valerius responded to his spirit. Do you not care that we have harmed the innocent? Another snort came from his spirit, and more black smoke billowed around those fiery eyes. I only care that we protect our territory. Sometimes that means sacrifices must be made. That may be true, but you do not get to make that decision on your own, Valerius reminded Raziel. I had to act, Raziel said. Have you nothing to say, King Valerius? Marban asked, and Valerius realized that his conversation with Raziel had taken too long, and his silence had stretched out too far. I was waiting for you to say something that mattered, Valerius spoke calmly. It was at that moment that Shione joined them in the throne room. She swept in with the scent of jasmine and looked like a delicate flower amidst the stone and slime. Marban immediately smiled broadly as he greeted her. Shione, What a pleasure to see you again. It's been such a long time. Shioni had no love for Marban, but ever the politician, she did not show it. She dipped her head towards him and responded, Yes, it has indeed been some time, Marban. I have to admit that this is a far more pleasant location than in the fields where you and your kind decimated the crops of my pharaoh's kingdom. Marban's yellow and twisted teeth were revealed as he smiled broader. I only did that because your pharaoh would not give my people our fair share of the crop. Share and share alike. Something that your new employer should remember, especially when he rains death on those I care about. I am sure that we can all agree that the situation that occurred today is unlikely to ever occur again. The 9th dragon shifter has joined our ranks, and that is unsettling, she admitted. I don't know about unsettling. The young man I met seemed quite nice, innocent, and brave, one of those knights in white shining armor. Marban tented his fingers in front of him and rested his gnarled chin upon them. Valerius tensed at that description. Could the white dragon be noble? A hero? No, that couldn't be. You met him? Shioni asked, sounding slightly breathless. How did he seem? Marban was silent for a moment as he considered her question. Finally, he said, He still believes that he can go home again. That this is all a dream, and everything will go back to normal. Shioni lowered her head and she shook it. Poor young boy, poor young boy. That caused Valerius to grit his teeth again. She was more concerned about the white dragon's mental state than the fact that he had infiltrated Valerius's territory. But was that him thinking or Raziel? He did not know. Where is the white dragon? Valerius asked again. What are you going to do with him, King Valerius? Marban asked, tilting his head to the side. That is none of your concern, Valerius snapped. Oh, but it is. It is a concern of every citizen of the world, I think. Marban disagreed. Simi's hands fisted at his sides. He cast a quick look over at Valerius. This questioning he saw as disrespectful, and it was. Part of Valerius wanted to simply turn Marban into ash and crush this place to dust. But the swarm shifter was one of the oldest shifters. He was a criminal, true. He was dangerous, true. He lied, true. But he did have a point of view quite different from Valerius's own, and sometimes there was value in this. So Valerius knew that it was wise to hear him out, no matter how galling. He could almost hear Shioni's approval in his mind. It was she who had taught him to be patient. Somewhat. What do you think people's thoughts and feelings will be about the white dragon? Shioni asked Marban. Marban tapped the fingers of both hands together. Those who are currently in power will be afraid. They will rightly guess that the white dragon will mean change, and for those who have everything as they want it, change is an anathema. He will not change things for us, Raziel said in a guttural tone. You are acting as if he could, Valerius pointed out. Valerius thought of Larian and May then. These two always saw threats whether there was one or not. What would they think of the white dragon? He was certain that Esme, the blue dragon, would have been frantically calling him as soon as the incident was reported. What would she think? Would she welcome this new dragon into the world, or would she advocate its quick destruction? Marban continued, For those who are dissatisfied with their position in life, they will embrace him for the exact same reasons, for they hope that he will put them on top. Valerius crossed his arms over his massive chest. And which one are you, Marban? The old man let out a tittering laugh. Though I have much, I embrace the winds of change, for it will bring interesting things to light. Besides, unlike many, I am able to ride the waves that are coming to shore. I change with the times. Can you? You thrive in chaos, so of course you think this welcome, Simi snapped as he pounded his chest. When people are afraid, you pretend to offer them answers, but all you are doing is seeking to line your own pockets and expand your own power base. Marban's yellow eyes widened. So passionate. What wrong have I done you? Simi stepped forward, black eyes blazing. What wrong? What wrong? You and your ilk make slaves of your fellow shifters. Whether you hold our debt or the keys to escape this life, you keep us all down here in the muck with you. Valerius knew what Simi had to go through in order to become a claw rather than a criminal. His parents had been poor to begin with, but Simi had been very intelligent, not to mention determined. He'd gone into the army in order to pay for schooling. He'd not only gotten an undergraduate degree, but also a law degree. He'd just been about to get his law license when he'd been chosen by a snake spirit. And that had destroyed any hopes of going to the law for him. I hope you are enjoying Dragon's Reign so far. Dragon's Reign wasn't the first dragon shifter story I wrote. Draken was. Draken is very different than Dragon's Reign, where shifters are out of the closet, so to speak. In Draken, things are very much hidden, and the world it's set in is our own. Here's the blurb for Draken. Poor student Sebastian grew up having a crush on his older, rich neighbor, Fallon. When the handsome man starts courting him, Sebastian can hardly believe it, but their developing love is threatened by Fallon's family's deep secret. They're all immortal dragon shifters. If you want to check out Draken, the first 5 chapters are free to read. A link in the description is down below. The position offered to him at a prestigious law firm had been rescinded. His law school friends wanted nothing to do with him. He was a criminal type shifter. Everyone knew that snakes were always criminals. Many whispered about what a near miss it had been. If the snake spirit had not chosen Simi, then they might not have known whatever criminal enterprises he'd supposedly been planning. This budding defender of the law was shunted to a snake shifter clan, which had wanted nothing more than to use his legal smarts to assist in their criminal enterprises. But Simi had rejected their offer and presented himself to Valerius during an open day at High Reach, where the populace could ask something of him. Ah, the snake shifter who has denied his own people to be Valerius's pet. Marban clicked his fingers together as if he suddenly remembered who Simi was, as if he hadn't already known. Considering the Claw Captain had been working in the below, busting Marban's people for 6 months now, this show of forgetfulness was quite amazing. Simi's cheeks flushed an angry red, and that impression of an adder about to strike from earlier was back. Valerius determined that this honorable man did not need to defend himself. The captain earned his place, Valerius interrupted, sick of this conversation and the stench in this room almost equally. I have let you fester down here, perhaps for too long, Marban. And let me guess, if I tell you where the white dragon has gone, you will let me fester unmolested longer? Marban asked with a flash of those yellowed teeth. It is fascinating to me that you are so unnerved by this white dragon. From what I can see, he is no match for you physically, and after having met him, he seems utterly unaware of the benefits of his position. That was interesting. But was Marban lying or telling the truth? It was always the hardest thing to tell. If he is so guileless, then why did you help him? Valerius asked. Not out of the goodness of your heart, I think. I did so because there was no harm in it. As I said, he is young and innocent, and you will find him, Marban answered. But he will still thank me in the end for keeping him out of your clutches for a few minutes more, so he can try and go home. Of course, then he'll figure out that home is no longer there any longer, but I will still have his loyalty. If you had truly been thinking of his well-being, you would have kept him here and called for us, Shioni argued quietly. Just like you should have realized long ago that decimating the crops would mean that no one ate, not your people or the pharaohs. Sometimes people only learn things the hard way. This boy must learn for himself the truth of things. The pharaoh would not see the suffering of his own people until he realized the suffering of all, Marban corrected her. We, once more, live in interesting times. Shioni pulled out her cell phone. She read something on it intently before coming up to Valerius and whispering in his ear, Nagoye has found video of the young man. He was coming out of some shop in the square. They might know who he is there. Valerius gave a nod. Then we go. Tell Nagoye to speak to no one at this shop. I will do the questioning, but make sure that none leave it. Without a word of goodbye to Marban, the Dragon King turned on his heel and strode swiftly out of the throne room. Shioni and Simi followed close on his heels. I look forward to seeing how you ride the waves of change, King Valerius, Marban called after them. I will have my people contact yours about your penance. Valerius ignored him. Black smoke poured out of Raziel's nostrils. Let me stay behind, my king. Marban knows more. I will get it out of him. Simi fumed at his shoulder as the much smaller snake shifter hustled to keep up with him. Simi had to take 2 steps to Valerius's 1. That will be a waste of your time, Valerius told him as they exited the secret passage that marked the entrance to Marban's quarters. The young man that had tried to keep them out popped up like a piece of corn in hot oil as they flew past. Simi's eyebrows drew together. I do not understand. Even if we find out who the young man is, we do not know where he is headed now. Marban does. And he has told us, repeatedly, Shioni answered. The White Dragon is making his way home. Valerius had thought such an idea ridiculous. He had never believed that the White Dragon would be so foolish as to actually go back to his home, but Marban did. And he thought that Marban was telling the truth about it. Would Marban admit such a thing without more pressure? He must be lying. Simi shook his head. He couldn't believe the White Dragon would be so foolish to go home either, evidently. Unless he is newly changed, Shioni pointed out. Remember how it was for you when you were new? What was the first thought you had? Simi's mouth flattened, besides realizing that my life was ruined. Or so I thought. I turned to my family, tried to turn to them. You speak to them now, do you not? Shioni asked, her expression torn. He nodded. Yes, I try. My father died 2 years ago, and my mother. I support her. She still worries, though, that the funds I use come from criminal activities, no matter what I say. Simi's eyes flickered over to Valerius. Forgive me, my king. I am certain you do not care to hear such inanities. On the contrary, I do wish to hear, Captain. Not just for what it might tell us about what the White Dragon may do, but to understand the current state of relations between humans and shifters, Valerius answered. And because you care for the captain as well, Shioni said with a bright look in his direction. Realizing that he had not said that, Valerius gave a nod. Yes, of course, that goes without saying. But did it really? I am honored if any of my experiences can help or matter in any way, Simi got out. He cleared his throat and said, If the White Dragon is new, then he will be confused at best and seek shelter with those he feels safest with, even after what happened with you, King Valerius. I think he will be quite desperate, Shioni echoed. To go home was the action of someone who had no guilty conscience. Certainly, they hardly appeared to be the act of some master schemer that was trying to take over Valerius's kingdom. Or he is simply foolish, Raziel snorted. Do not assume that he is innocent when stupidity will answer for his actions. I am holding off my judgment on him. But these are not the actions of a guilty man, Raziel, Valerius pointed out. Yet he found his way to the Lord of the Underworld. He avoided the Claw. These are facts too, and they do not make the White Dragon seem so innocent, Raziel said. Which is why I am withholding judgment one way or the other, Valerius retorted. You need to explain to me why he angers you so much. His spirit was suddenly hidden behind great billows of black smoke, making reading its expression impossible. Valerius thought that Raziel would say something like he had so far, but then his spirit responded in a very small voice. Do you not feel it? Do you not feel this connection he has to us? Valerius frowned, his brows drawing together. Connection? No, He is not like the others, Raziel whispered, almost as if uttering these words were against its will. Before Valerius could ask more, he exited the warren and entered the market. There were crowds of people milling around near the steps that led up to the stairs and the lifts. He could have flown to the mid, but Simi and Shioni wouldn't have been able to come with him. Raziel allowed no one to ride on their back, and Valerius had a feeling that the people of Reach had had enough of dragon sightings for one day, so they would take the lifts. The people parted before them like the Red Sea had for Moses. Valerius did not look left or right, but only straight ahead. If he was honest with himself, he was avoiding these people's gazes. While Marban might not truly care about the dead, these people did. Those who had been crushed outside were their friends, their neighbors, or maybe even their family, and he was to blame. The crowd seemed restless. The claw filtered out of the crowd and lined his route. "Killer," someone hissed in the crowd, their voice low but distinct to his hearing. "Murderer," another answered. There were murmurs of agreement and some of dismay. "Quiet! He could kill us all!" another shouted. "But there are more of us than there are of him!" another cried. The claw around him shouted for there to be order and for them to make way for the Dragon King. The crowd went almost silent, and the silence was worse than the words had been. Valerius would never forget their words or their silence. How could he make amends to these people? Was it even possible? "Why do you care?" Raziel repeated again. "When we fly high enough, we cannot hear them or see them, so forget them." Raziel had never spoken so dismissively before today of the people they ruled, or maybe he had just not noticed it. His own reluctance to deal with humanity until the war 30 years ago might have poisoned his spirit against others. Or was it the other way around? He had withdrawn from the world mostly because all he had known, all he had loved, was gone. Long gone, ashes and dust and forgotten. "We never wanted to rule, Raziel," he reminded the spirit. "But since we determined to do so, we must be just. You know this." Raziel said nothing. Valerius wanted to ask it more about this alleged connection to the White Dragon, but he found himself reluctant to. Even as they boarded one of the glass and steel lifts that shot them upwards towards the mid, both he and Raziel stayed silent. Shioni was looking at her cell phone again. She reported, "Captain Nagoye tells me that the name of the shop we are going to is Wally Nuts Emporium." She frowned. "I wonder what such a shop could sell." "Oh, Wally's?" Simi asked, but then quickly pressed his lips together. Unlike before, when he had been trying to repress his anger, now he seemed to be repressing a smile. "What is it? What is this Wally's?" Valerius asked with a frown. Simi let out a slight laugh. "You'll have to see it to believe it, my king." I hope you enjoyed this week's chapter. If you want to read ahead in Dragon's Reign or read the many other stories hosted there, you can purchase a membership to get access to wraithrain.com, or you can continue to listen along here for free. If you'd like to learn more about wraithrain.com and me, there's a link in the description down below.